I'm delighted to be with you today. Incredibly happy to introduce you to my good friend, John Krotek. John and I met through a mutual acquaintance, brought together in a collective task for progressing the military veterans' quality of life. We were united as brothers who had served in the United States Army during different periods of time, but united under one flag. So it is my pleasure to introduce you to John Krotek, who's a founder, a visionary, speaker, podcaster, and a veteran. He has 25 years as a profitable small business owner, and he has developed a volunteer program for the Nathan Benderson Park in Sarasota, Florida, which is an international aquatic center. Now, during John's time there as a volunteer coordinator from 2009 to 2015, he oversaw the management of 12,000 volunteers in over 160 events, from weekend 5K races to multi-day Olympic caliber competitions, which included rowing, the pentathlon, and the triathlon. John was on the team that helped bring international rowing back to the United States in 2016. His current business projects include Green Zone Hero, Straight Outta Combat Radio, Task Force Zen, and Task Force Zen Radio. John Krotek is a childhood assault and traumatic brain injury survivor. He has designed 2 holistic healing speaking programs to help people through their personal trauma. Ladies and gentlemen, without further delay, let's jump into the conversation. Hey everybody, welcome to the True Success Podcast. I want to welcome my friend John Krotek to the show. Me and John have known each other for about a year now. We met through Chris Hoffman and his veterans coaching and training programs. And, I've gotten to speak to him quite a few times, and he actually had me on his podcast recently. John, if you don't mind, please introduce yourself and tell us what you've got going on today.
Well, thanks for that introduction, Kirby. John Krotek here, Army veteran, business entrepreneur. Been doing it for a while, and the year went by pretty quick. I have talked many times in the past year. Of course, a lot's been going on, and even still, we've been able to discuss some pretty heavy-duty subjects. And just blessed to be here, and humbled to be here. And I'm just glad to be on your podcast. Finally, it seems like it took us a while, but we're here.
Yeah. Well, the move to Kansas City here, and I pretty much took about 6 weeks off from recording and. Just trying to get settled in, take care of the family, and get things going again. It's been pretty crazy. So I appreciate you, you mentioning that, and it's great to have you back on and repay the kindness that you showed me on your podcast. So you have a book coming out. So I'd like to talk about that first because I don't. If we do run out of time, I want to make sure I give you the time to talk about that. Or it's been out for a while.
It's been out since March. It's kind of a different book. It's not a self-help book.
Yeah.
In a way it is. It's a poetry book. It's a compilation. Mm-hmm. It's called Fractals, the poetic journey for self-acceptance. And I had it published through Kim Richardson Publishing out in Arizona. Awesome experience. If you're looking to publish your own book, get in touch with Kim. And, she doesn't pay me for that. She deserves that. It came out and we got best-selling category in four different areas. Poetry, international for poetry, and then depression and sexual assault and mental health. And so it was basically putting together all the pieces from a traumatic brain injury that I had in 2012 and letting people know that have suffered through trauma that they're not alone. And I just did it through poetry. I'm one of those wild people, I guess. I started writing poetry in middle school and kept them to myself. And then decided at this time it was time to let some of it out there. So after a traumatic brain injury accident that I had, which released a lot of demons from an early childhood thing that happened that wasn't a lot of fun. And anyhow, it's been a great. I think I got some great reviews from the people that have read it. And, just thanks for mentioning it,
Yeah.
But I got another book in the making. I've got thousands of poems. I've got another one I'm working on, and it's called "What's Your Apocalypse," and that'll be kind of like a self-help book, but look for that one early next year.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate you sharing that with me. Just to tell you, when they told me I was in high school, I remember, and they said we're going to do like 9 weeks or 8 weeks, whatever it was, on poetry. I was ready to gouge my eyes out. I was like, no way. I says I don't want to do this. Maybe that was the masculine, toxic piece of me coming out there, and I didn't want to get involved in it. And I've kind of avoided for most of my lifetime now. Through some of my, masculinity and manliness studies and some of this other stuff that I've done over the years, because I grew up without a father. So I've kind of done my own research and sought other people out. I've ran across a few things, and one was Rudyard Kipling. He's a great poet, and his poem "If" was very, very, very important to me. And that's the one I've kind of latched onto, because I think it really talks about the character of a man. Much like a lot of our conversations we've been having over the time that we've been together, we talk about that character and those values. And when I read your book over the last few days, I actually heard some of that coming out of there. Some of the stuff that I thought Rudyard was doing. How to conduct yourself, how to act, how to behave. And then some of the challenging times that we go through as well, and how And so I said, that was when I read it, I was just like sort of flying through it. I went back and I would read things like 2 or 3 times to pick up some of the things that you were saying. And then I really appreciated the fact that you gave a description at the bottom, about how you personally felt, after writing it, post-write, or even later on, whenever you decided to do it. But it kind of gave you an idea of inside the author of the poem's mind. And I will tell you, like, as a guy who never reads poetry, I really enjoyed it. And I feel like I should start reading more and more of it now that I've read yours. So I just want to thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome, man. And thanks for reading it, Kirby. I didn't know that you got it, but so often we pick up a poetry book and we don't know what the hell it means. We read a poem and we might even read it 2 or 3 times. So I wanted to put those excerpts at the end, kind of like a recap. But poetry to me is a way, and Rudyard Kipling, by the way, holy cow, that guy is incredible. It's just an expression. Songs are expressions, they're poems set to music. And, so often, everybody goes through the same things. And as a guy, we have this society that we live in, and there's a construct of how we're supposed to be. And like I said, when I wrote poetry so many years ago and continue to do it, I kept it hidden. I wasn't going to be the kid that said, "Hey, and by the way, I'm writing poetry." You know what that is. So,
yeah. You might get beat up on the playground.
And I did without the poetry. No, but I'm just saying that, it's just a form of expression. And the cool thing about poetry is it's raw. My poems aren't like, What's the Night Before Christmas. Mine are kind of more free flow. The rhyme is a little bit complex, but if you read it and you take it to heart, what you'll get out of it is that you are not alone. And many of the same things that I write about are the same things that you can probably relate to. So, yeah.
Yeah, I tell you, you're 100% right. It is a freedom of expression. Even when I write, I don't write poetry, but when I write, I write in a journal, or I write daily in a blog. I email that out to my subscribers. I find it freeing. And if the days that I don't do it, I'm not the same person. And so I have to kind of give that release. And then, hey, this is what I'm going through. This is what I've learned from it. Now I can start my day. That's all it is. I'm just getting it off my chest. I'm letting it go. And luckily I've got, a bunch of people that want to hear about it.
Awesome, man. That, it's therapy. You're a counselor. You get it. It's so important for your, to your psyche to get that off your chest. And all I can say is I've been very blessed. I'm not unlike millions of other human beings out there that have had rough things happen. On the outside, I look great. I got all the teeth in my head. And, on the inside, there was some rewiring that needed to take place. And, anytime you're assaulted anytime, you have to rewire what that does to you. And as a guy coming out, with that side of the story, I can't tell you, Kirby, man, how many people, LinkedIn, Facebook, in private messaging said, "Hey, John, thanks for telling your story. Oh, and by the way, when I was 9 years old at Uncle Bill's house, this happened. So it blew me away how many people could relate to many of the things that I had to experience as a child. And yeah, I'm
Yeah,
just, I'm here to
I have to
talk.
say, yeah, I have to say that I appreciate that, and I want to say thank you for that. I worked in the Army for 2 years as a program manager and an advocate for victims of sexual assault. So I did a
Awesome.
lot of events, and most of it were people that had experienced something as an adult while they were in the military. But what we were finding out, and we were encountering, is a lot of people were coming out from when they were even children, and because they were hearing the stories of other folks, and they saw how healing and how powerful it was, and that these people could stand up there and be very transparent and vulnerable about their experience and talk through it. And I understand the more you tell the story, the more that narrative can be healing for you and be even more powerful. That's why it's not a good idea to keep things within, because you just bottle them up and it'll just tear you apart from the inside out. And the more we can share our story, even if it's little breadcrumbs at a time, you'll find that you begin to build more trust again. You become more encouraging, and then you get the right support group around you. Anybody that's going through a traumatic experience, we probably all have our experiences, but I found that very, very, very powerful in your book, because when I read it, I could hear and see some of the experiences that I had as an advocate program manager. And I think it's wonderful. And I've read plenty of books about sexual assault and, things like that. And I found it was a really great, and there's this thing we used to do in the Army, which reminded me of your book, called the Poetry Slam. So I think you probably should get on the Army circuit and go out there and do some of these things and start reading them, and be an encouraging person for other people as well. It's an opportunity. I know during April, which is Sexual Assault Response Prevention Month for the Department of Defense, they do those poetry slams where people go out there and they express themselves, and sometimes you're like, wow, it's very powerful, and then some of them are very emotional, very saddening, and some of them there's hatred coming out, but usually everybody feels much better after being able to express themselves. So poetry is just one of those amazing things, and so I wouldn't hide your gift, man, any longer. Let the world have it.
Yeah, thank you for that, Kirby. And it's just, it is nice to tell a story, and it's what connects us. We all talk about oneness, right? Like that's the big buzzword now, and higher consciousness. Higher consciousness does not inoculate us from pain and suffering.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm becoming enlightened, and oh, I'm letting it all out. You're still going to go through pain and suffering. And you just said it just a second ago. Everyone can relate to some kind of trauma in their lives, whether it's the death of a loved one, or, it could be financial ruin. It could be divorce. It could be combat related. Obviously sexual assault and sexual abuse, but it could be disfigurement from an accident. Every human being on this planet has been through something. And if we can reach out to each other and help each other and find ways to make the community better, or society better, our countries better, our families better, then sign me up. Let's do it. I didn't always think that way, because it took a traumatic brain injury to bring all that to light. But that's the way I wish more people would look at themselves, as they're amazing. Human beings are amazing. Every single one of us out there is just a creative force waiting to just tell the story. And that's why you have a podcast, Kirby, because you understand that the significance of, giving people the opportunity to tell their story, but also to your listeners, man. This is an opportunity that you're giving people out there to listen to people like me who just want to help. So you could say, we're helpers, man. We're operating at a high elevation.
Yeah, facilitating conversation, and that's important, because, again, I'll reflect back to my time as a program manager and advocate. I learned the FETI through Russell Strand, who's this icon in the Army, about this forensic examination that teaches law enforcement to do, not only to collect information as they're speaking with victims, but also help them in that healing process. So it's not victimizing. They're expressing and freeing themselves as well. And through that process, he was explaining to us what happens to the human brain once you go through a traumatic event, post-traumatic. And he used a couple examples of people he had worked with. with. And the brain's so fractured after a traumatic event like that there's like pieces missing. And you talked about in your childhood, and it took you another traumatic event before that was kind of like released, your brain jostles up. But he explained it like this. He's like, when you have a traumatic event, you just basically take a puzzle in a box and just throw it up in the air and let the pieces fall. And then that person is now trying to put those back together. And sometimes they can't find pieces and they're missing back there. But through a particular technique that he taught, you were able to kind of reach back and find that missing piece and put it together. And then this flood of information just comes flowing out of people because now they've figured out how to put the missing piece back in the puzzle, and they're able to kind of free and open themselves up. And sometimes those are events, in our lives that it's like, oh, wait a minute, wow. And they trigger something and it brings back more memories. So they're buried in there. The brain's recorded it. We just got to go back in and try and find them somehow. And so I think that, like you said, that was, I think that's important to understand that just because you've had an event doesn't mean that there's not post-traumatic stress growth or something else that can happen. And you can become stronger from that experience rather than always be, in that place of, I'm never going to be the same again. And I personally believe in that. Jay McGonigal, who wrote the book Super Better, really made me believe that. And she's got a great TED talk out there about it, her experience with depression, because she had a head injury and came back from the dead. I mean, they basically said, you'll never get out of bed the rest of your life, and she was in this bad state. But she treated life like a video game, one level at a time. So, and she got back to where she's at now. So,
well, no, and everybody's got that story. I was one of those guys that called the suicide hotline. I was one of the guys that my whole life was crumbling. I didn't know what was going on. All these bad memories were resurfacing. My emotional mood swings were like freaking off the charts. Nobody wanted to be around me. All my friends were like leaving me, like, that's not the John we know. And then it wasn't long before I was embroiled in the middle of a divorce, and I just didn't want to be here, man. So I made the call, and I'm telling you, Kirby, they literally talked me off the ledge. I got 6 months of cognitive behavioral therapy. I did 6 months of experimental with CBDs, cannabidiols, to help rewire the brain. And then just a whole lot of love and a whole lot of support network. I saved my marriage. I'm on some really cool projects now. And I'll tell you, you mentioned a book. I'll mention a book too. A book by Vishen Lakhiani with Mind Valley. Okay. The title is The Code of the Extraordinary Mind. And I've read tons of books, but that was a book that an Army buddy, combat veteran from Iraq, infantry officer, U.S. Army guy, said, John, you got to read this book, man. And I did. And that began the journey of self-help. Part of the journey, always looking for something better. But that book was a really good book. And gosh, we could name tons of books, but yeah, it's all about it. And I had a real firm spiritual, I know this isn't what the story is about today, but I had a spiritual foundation that I think is really important. And that's personal too. It's not like I have to go out there and proselyte, God or the creator or the powers of the universe or whatever comes to people in different ways. But to me, it's all the same life force. And, there's a lot of cool things with the spiritual part of it, but we don't have to go there. But
no, it's just a testament to you, John, because your character. I mean, you're always, this is about you today in your book, and you're always talking about other people. That's like the third person you've given kudos today so far. You're like, hey, go out there and reach out to these people. You're always giving love out there. So, I mean, that's
what we do, man. That's what we do. And like, again, I'm not just blowing smoke. Thank you for that. And I just, again, thrilled to death to be able to help wherever we can. So,
yeah. So tell me, the first title or the first chapter in your book or introduction basically says, why fractals now? Can you explain that to us?
Yeah. What a great lead in, you talked about the puzzle, right? Yeah. Throwing it up. And so you're so very correct. When a traumatic event happens, and I think it's been said that 75% of the humans on this planet have been through at least one emotional traumatic event. Then it says they believe that it's been as many as 40% have been through multiple traumas. And so we quite literally, Kirby, we have a global community, global population of emotionally traumatized people. Let's get real. That's the reality of it. Some people handle it better than others. And so we have a lot of boxes of jigsaw puzzles out there that the pieces don't quite fit. And for me, it was fractals. I had all these pieces of my personality that couldn't integrate. It wasn't like I was split personality and, what do they call that, multiple personality disorder. I wasn't one of those, but I kept a lot of things bottled up inside, as do most people. I'm not anybody different. There's nothing really that picks me out from the group. And so I went about my life, on certain skill sets and certain modus operandi and behaviors that I didn't necessarily like. And a lot of anger and resentment just under the surface. Sometimes, you could just set me off, and it was like, why would I do that? And it never made me feel good. I never liked being angry with people. And even in college, to deaden the pain, I'd like to have one or two beers too many. And then I was a guy that could fall in love pretty easy. But once it got real intimate and the deed was done, I would be like the first guy to just ghost. And again, that made me feel worse. Who wants to break a person's heart? So all this went on. I could say it got better as I got older because of coping skills. But then 2012 occurs, and I'm out with a buddy of mine shooting pool, and had a couple of glasses of wine, and the next thing I know, I'm on the side of the road in an accident with a freaking nice head bump, concussion. And it was almost immediate. So mood swings, all the stuff I just described, going into the abyss, not being able to find a way out of the abyss. And then you mentioned it, the support network was so important. I had people that really cared about me and really loved me. And you mentioned love, and 9 months of all of these treatments and all of this hard work. And I get this letter in the mail. Within the letter was actually a card. My wife had separated from me. She was in Virginia. I was in Florida. And it was the week before Thanksgiving, man, 2016. And my wife says, hey, listen, I just want you to know that I got in touch with my attorney this morning, and I have called off our divorce. And I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I've seen a change in you. And that streamed out of, I had to let her go. My therapist told me, we can't save your marriage, but we can save you. And so when you start to work on yourself and you go inward, and you don't try to blame everything that happens to you on everybody outside of yourself, you start to really shine. And my wife saw something in me that, I got to tell you, Kirby, I literally fell on my knees and cried like a freaking baby. And all the AAMs and the Distinguished Service Medal and all those things meant nothing.
Yeah.
To, I really earned the opportunity and the right to have my marriage back. And I got to tell you, it was hard work. Nothing's easy in life, but if you want it, you and me smoking Joe, go get some. Yeah. If you want your life to really shine and be the best you can be, remember the Army commercial?
Yeah.
Then it's not going to come from anybody else. It's going to come from you and the choices that you make. So, so Fractals, it was a way of putting all the pieces together in poetic form, a poetic journey for acceptance. And until I could accept myself and what that puzzle looked like, I was going to continue to do the same BS that I've done all my life, get to a certain point, do really good, and then sabotage all of it. And that's what people do. That's what humans do. We don't feel we're good enough. We don't feel we deserve the best in life. Well, I got news. We do deserve the best in life, and we are good enough. And until you believe it, you're a counselor, and I'll be very brief because I know you got other questions. But one of the things that my therapist asked me to do, because insomnia is a huge part of TBI and PTSD. And I would get up at 1 o'clock in the morning, almost religiously, 1:30, 1:15, 2 o'clock. I'd turn on every light in the house. By the way, this is not my house. One day, but I would get up, I would pace, I would be really angry and full of anxiety, full of angst, and just crazy thoughts. She said, when that happens, John, you got to promise that you do this. She goes, go in to your bathroom in front of that big mirror, in front of that sink of yours, turn on the light, and she says, look at that person in the mirror, dead in the eyes, and say, I love you, man. And I thought it was weird. I'm like, holy cow, really? I'm going to do this? So the first night, that night I'm home, right? 2:15, I get up. I'm like, holy crap, I did it. I looked around, Kirby, to make sure nobody was around. And I went up and I said, I love you, man. And then I went back to bed, or tried to get back to bed. So that went on crazy like that. But what happened was it started to build. Then it went to not just an I love you, to I love you. I think you're a real, hardcore person. You're an awesome dude. And over a period of time, it started to have an effect. And you know this, man. It's like rewiring your brain. Mm-hmm. So I really started to believe that guy staring back at me, that guy who had been such an asshole to his wife, he actually is a decent guy. He just never believed that, based on some nonsense that happened to him as a child, which, by the way, those things that happen to us, they don't define us unless we let them. Mm-hmm. So I started caring about who I was and started really digging it. And it wasn't like I was kissing my arms or anything, but I felt really good about who I was. And 3 months into my treatment, my cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, we've got these acronyms. My therapist is smiling at me, and I'm like, Cheryl, why are you smiling at me? And she said, John, I've been doing this for 30 years plus, and you are a guy that's actually doing the work, and you make me happy. And you and I talked about this, Kirby. Mm-hmm. You've got to do the work. Yeah. And the work is not easy, because I have never claimed sainthood. I've made lots of mistakes. I've hurt people in my life. In doing so, I've hurt myself. But I can tell you, I will sign up for the Broken Angels Club any day of the week. None of us are saints. We've all made mistakes, and we're going to continue to make mistakes. But until you can actually come to grips with that and believe in yourself, you're going to continue to do that. And even when you make a mistake, even after you admit it, drive on. When we say Fido, I won't use it, but drive on. It happens. So thank you for letting me. It was a long answer to a short question, but Fractals is just putting together the pieces, and hopefully I can make an impact with the book, and hopefully somebody that reads it, like yourself, will be touched by at least one poem and realize that we're all in this together.
Yeah, brother. When I read it, I highlighted a bunch of stuff and I wrote a bunch of notes, because it brought things up for me. It's just not only just for my own personal life, but people I've worked with. And I was like, I could relate and connect, because I don't understand how many times I've sat in an interview room with somebody who's just had a traumatic experience trying to explain to an investigator what just happened to them. And people just don't get it. Like, and I think one of the biggest challenges for me is all those times I got introduced to what human trafficking was. And I didn't really know, this is class the Army made us take all the time, and you just click through, you don't really care. You don't slow down to take the time. But when you actually experience it, when you hear people's stories, when you can feel what they feel and you're sitting right next to them. And there's times where I had to go, I got to a point where I was like, I need some help, because I needed to, because I was absorbing that, right? And I was carrying that with me every single day. So those first responders that do go out there and care for these people, it's a burnout job. Literally, they do a tremendous job, and they don't get enough support, because they do carry that with them. It's not like I can go home and have some pillow talk with my wife about what I just, because it's an ongoing investigation. Plus, it's personal to that person, and it's not for me to tell. Yeah. And so I have to hold that in, and I had to go to a counselor, because I was just like, I had, and there's help for all the first responders and advocates and program managers out there doing this job, because the weight and of what they're going through, and the stories and everything else, it's hard, and there's some days where like, I just don't want to get up, and go to work, but you do anyway, because there's purpose in that. It's like, there's one more person out there that needs my help. And like I said, the burnout rate is really high. Even we're working with fatherless boys, the advocates in that arena, or kids that are in court-appointed homes and stuff like that, foster care, people who've been taken away from their parents. It's a tough job. And I don't think we really focus and pay attention to it enough, not only on the victim side, but where I would like to go with that is that, to your point, we don't provide enough support for victims either. especially in the human trafficking arena. That was one thing the lady in Baltimore, the Samaritan woman that I got to engage with quite a few times. She was telling about the challenges of her organization. Um, and most of the victims, in human trafficking would end up going back to the only thing that they knew was human trafficking because there was no support. We're great as a society about go get the bad guy, take them out, put them in prison, do whatever we're going to do to them, right, as far as the law is concerned. But then there's no support for the victims afterwards. It's like, okay, well, we got the bad guy. Everything's great now. No, it's not. People have lived fractured lives. And that's why I like the word, how you did fractals and you talked about the broken pieces that are holding us back. Because we we do justice, right? We go after justice. But there's another piece that's missing after that. And I think that that's the challenging part for us because we go back to our normal lives and we forget about those people. That's
No,
those people over there. And we don't want to expose ourselves and become vulnerable and share in with what their experiences are.
No, you're so right, Kirby. The statistics and the reality is astounding when it comes to trauma, especially sexual type traumas. I've read where 1 out of 3 girls by the time she's 18 has a story to tell.
Yeah.
And the boys, they say 1 out of 5, but it might even be higher because the perpetrators know that boys don't like to talk. Mm-hmm. And so it could be as high as the women. But, a lot of the people that are out there that are entering into high risk behaviors, I was a mountain climber for 12 years. Mm-hmm. I drank and I drove, and I did crazy. I had a motorcycle too, and it was never. You wonder about high risk behavior. Well, it could be directly linked back to low self esteem, where you just don't really care, and then to the traumatic event itself. Mm-hmm. So you're so right. The people that are listening to people like me also need the release valve, and they also need to have that compassionate bone stroked every now and then because we're, like I said, we're in this together. Yeah. And a lot of these traumas that we go through, and especially with sexual assault traumas, a lot of them are what we call ancestral traumas. Mm-hmm. They repeat themselves. So what happened to me as a small boy, and what happened probably has been going on for generations. And then what happens is when a person like me finally said enough is enough, I'm so glad and thankful that what happened to me is something that I never perpetrated upon another human. But at the same time, there were forms of pain that I did dish out. Oh, I'm in love with you. And, oh, okay, I'm going to spend the rest of my life with you. And did I ever say that? And so, so the pain of that, I still was able to dish out pain. And when you finally say to yourself, I can't dish out pain because when I do that, I even feel more pain. And we can't escape pain. So, in the service we say, embrace the suck. Why am I digging with this small entrenchment tool in the middle of the desert? Why am I doing this? Well, mm-hmm. It could save your life from a shrapnel. But embrace the suck. Life at times has sucky moments. What happened to me was one of them. What mm-hmm. happens to other people? So deal with it. It's an event, and it's easier said than done. I get that. I'm not saying this is lollipops mm-hmm. and unicorns. This is serious business. But realize that it's just an event. Doesn't define who you are, and look for a way to deal with it in a way that's constructive and positive. Because you can take that nasty event and you can recreate that over and over and over mm-hmm. again. And all you're going to do is make the world a tougher place to be for mm-hmm. somebody else. I choose these days when I feel, let's say, a trigger, we've heard these triggers, something that a smell or, just an event that tries to trigger this emotional response. I pick up a guitar now, or I never played a musical instrument in my life. I'm playing a guitar now. It's taken me 3 years to just, strum 6 chords, but I'm doing it. And or better yet, you've heard this before, mm-hmm. Walden's Pond, take a deep breath, walk outside. It's just an emotion. Mm-hmm. Kind of like fear, like there's a lot of fear going on right now.
Yeah.
fear is the greatest suppressor of activity. The minute you become scared, you do nothing to move forward, and you're easy to manipulate. And so I just say, fear, if there's a grizzly out there, yeah, you got to run. I mean, come on. But if it's a fear that's just in your brain, it's just a thought. It's a fleeting thought. That kid that did that to me, he's not going to ever do that to me again. And so if that trigger comes up around another person, that's not that person. And you have to let those barriers to healing go away. But we do have a lot of work to do, and we continue to do a lot of work. And all I know is this, is if you can develop some kind of compassion, not only for yourself, which is where it starts, but once you start to have compassion for yourself in the situation you're in, you mentioned fatherless boys. That's trauma. That's serious flipping trauma. There's not a role model in the house. He's trying to figure it out on his own. But I can assure you that if you don't give up and you believe in yourself and you look for ways to make better choices in your life, no matter what the trauma is, you're going to find fulfillment. You're going to be able to create happiness and joy on levels that you never knew existed. I was always, if you look at the cover of my book, we don't have it, but you look at the third grader on one side and the fourth grader on the other side, you see a kid in a Cub Scout uniform full of happiness and joy and inquisitiveness. You can just see it in my eyes. And I remember that kid. And I also remember the fourth grader on the right side of the cover. He's sullen. He's detached. He trusts nobody. He feels like a piece of shiza. He doesn't. He's done. He's toast. He's a child zombie. And so I get it. I feel it. But guess what? That 90-second event caused a lot of pain. And all it was a 90-second event. So there are people out there like you, Kirby, that care, like Cheryl Andrews at Centerpoint here in Venice, Florida, south of us, that care. People like Kat Kalin, who I love to death. And the list goes on. Pete Turner, who does our podcast. And I can't tell you, Cheryl Christensen here in Sarasota, Florida, runs the 4 Pillars. And the list goes on, Yeah, there's so many people out there that are willing to help. And I can tell you, if you're in a dark place and an abyss, the best thing you can do to any veterans out there, even if you're not a veteran, pick up the phone and call someone. I tell you, I never thought in my wildest dreams that John Krotek at 56 years old would call Suicide Hotline. That just wasn't me, man. To me, that was a weak thing to do, but it was probably the strongest thing that you'll ever do if you really need help. And some of those people that I mentioned, there's just, Chris Hoffman that you mentioned, the guys out there out in front, trying to help wherever he can. And there's a lot of them out there. The list goes on. I know you could name so many people, but they're out there and they want to help. That woman, I have no idea what her name was on the other end of that hotline. That woman saved my life. I could have hung up. I could have just rode right underneath of a tractor trailer truck. I was on the interstate, and then I wouldn't be here to help anybody. And my wife would not have a husband. And my stepchildren would not have a stepdad. And then Kirby wouldn't have John on his show. And just, think of it's better to be here than not be here. And if you get to that point, call Kirby up. He'll give you his number. Call me up. No, this wasn't a suicide show, but
no, it's important. It's important. I mean, we've all experienced it in some form, maybe in my own personal life, but outside of the military, but even in the military. I mean, I remember. Just recently, just a quick snippet. I over the summer or spring, while COVID's going on, I was doing some running stuff, and I was working with an organization called 22 Too Many, and you basically memorialize somebody who lost their life to PTSD. And I had spent a lot of time with this guy when it was my first duty station. It was 1999. I joined the military in 96 or 97. 96, 96 as the Guard. 99, I went on active duty. And we became best friends. We hung out. We did everything together. There's a group of us, 2 or 3 of us, actually, that, we're inseparable. We're like a trio. And I was looking on 22 Too Many's website. And I was looking for names of people, and I was searching for like local people because I wanted to do something for people locally. People that had been
Sure.
in Fort Leonard Wood or some other stuff, and Missouri, some Kansas kids, and I ran across his name, and looked at the picture and I was like, I know that guy, and that you don't want to, and the thing about it is when I moved to that spot, he had taken his own life 6 months before I had gotten there. And I
Mm.
was like, man, if I would have just been able to get here 6 months sooner, timing was everything. And we had lost contact. We had met one time when we were in Iraq. We bumped into each other. And I was too, we were like too busy. He was going one way, I was going the other. We're like, hey, we'd like talk for like 5 minutes and catch up with you later and never caught back up again. And so when I saw that picture, it was like, wow, like this is how I have to find out. Like, and so I reached out, I talked to his sister. I let her know what I was doing. I was going to memorialize him, and I ran like 24. I ran a marathon that day actually, and I said, "Hey, this is us." So I took a bunch of pictures and I shared it with her, and she was doing really great, and she loved it. It was healing for her as well because her brother was not forgotten, and he has a child and a wife, and I never got to meet them, but hopefully one day I will. But yeah, Joel it was huge. I was like, wait a minute. And I reached out to my buddy, the other person in our trio, and he was just like, I had no idea. And it's like,
It's sad, man.
We care. We really
Yeah.
do, we just lose control. So that's the part about this, the military that I hated the most, right? Was we just lose connection with each other. And we don't have to, we lose contact, because we move around, you go here, you go there, you get caught up in your lives, you have a family, you got kids, you retire, you lose track of people. And that's the hardest part. And that's why I'm glad people do reach out to folks, on certain days of the year and say, reach out to a buddy, make sure they're doing okay. If you haven't heard from them a while,
Especially now during COVID that you just
Mhm.
mentioned, Kirby, this has been a really rough time for a lot of people. And what better time now than to make contact with an old army buddy or,
Yeah.
an old school friend or a family member you haven't talked to. And you're so right, Kirby. It's all about the communication. And I got to tell you, man, and you know this, there are people out there that care.
Yeah.
And for those listening that may be in somewhere that you don't want to be, make the call.
Yeah.
Drop the email, make the call, send a text. Chances are that person would love to hear from you, or would love to help where you're at. So I know that all the listeners aren't in bad places, but just in case.
Yeah, it's important. It's important. You never know what somebody in your family, your life is going through. So earlier you mentioned something about risk, and then you also, because with your marriage, there's risk there and you had to take the risk, and eventually your wife came back, and so you had to go through all these things. But you also mentioned fear as well. My next question relates to kind of both of those, risk and fear. Um, what's the one thing that you need to do that scares you the most right now? Because you've already done some incredible things. So,
one thing that I need to do that scares me the most, I got to tell you, man, it sounds so cliche, but I'm not scared of anything. I'm really not. I'm more fearful for my friends and family that I love dearly, would hate to see anything happen. But what I really like to do is just, I really need to just get out there more, and shows like you help that with that mission.
Yep.
And I got to tell you, I want to just surround myself with people that oscillate like you do, that operate at a high vibrational state, that are out there on the front lines, trying to be positive in light of all the darkness that we read about every day. And, I think that what I need to do, what I would suggest is I probably just need to separate more from the noise and get out there more and meet and greet and talk to people as much as I can, as safe as I can. But I'm not scared. I'm not really scared,
Yeah, you've done some pretty incredible things. So what you've done is probably one of the most scary things that most people could ever do. Not only write a book and put themselves out there like that, publicly, but just share that. It's incredible. So with that being said, I always ask this question because I'm a visionary guy. I like strategic planning and thinking and things like that. Even if we don't end up there, at least we understand a direction. Where do you think you're going to be at in maybe 10 or 20 years?
in a darn good place, man. Just like I am today. I'm working on, Green Zone Hero project still
Yeah.
continues to go.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that too.
Well, it's a business directory. It's a business directory on core values. And we always say, it's this on steroids or this on speed. We're a business directory that's on core values. And what we do is we're a marketing company. We give B2B tools to companies that honor and support freedom. And then, well, how did they do that? Well, if you're doing things if your business, company, organization, if you're doing things for veterans, active duty personnel and their families, could be discounts and employment, whatever, join the community. It's $1 a day, $1.37 a day. And just because of COVID, we've extended all the memberships out. We gave away free memberships. We just get in the community and let the rest of the world know that you are a company, a person, an organization that has core values. So Green Zone Hero, safe place in a combat zone, a green zone. Well, relatively safe, but a Green Zone Hero is a business that supports freedom.
Yeah, and you got some pretty incredible sponsors on there too.
Yeah, we're super stoked. Harley Davidson, Boar's Head Provisions, Sam Ash Music. These are companies, Mission Barbecue. These are companies that are the best of the best. They are the epitome of good business. And anybody that's in our network, I can assure you, they didn't have to join. What's Green Zone Hero but a brand new brand? But they joined because they believed in the community and they believe in freedom. So, I think it's a great value. We're doing some cool things there. We continue to grow the network. I think we're in 38 states, 750 different locations of different businesses. And then that's one thing. And then, we're doing Straight Outta Combat Radio, which is it's podcasts like yours that tell stories. And we're trying to diminish the negative stereotype of combat veterans, especially combat veterans. And we're doing pretty well. I think I'm at 135 episodes or something.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. So you've done a lot. I mean, and you've had a lot of success in your life. How do you define true success for John?
Success is different for everybody. And a great question, Kirby. You have to define success by what your core values are, what in life. I just finished a John and Missy Butcher. I didn't finish it. It happens for the rest of your life. It's Through the Mind Valley. I'm doing the life book. And it talks about these 12 categories in life. And I think success is integrating those fractals in a life vision that I can be really that gives back to humanity. And by doing that, the universe will reward me. And I just know that I'm not going to be happy every day of my life, but I'm going to certainly try to be happy. So success to me would be living that life vision where you're making a true impact on humankind. I got to tell you, I'm working on a project now. I'm not going to give it up, but we go live on September 11th. It is a global platform for our client base to be able to wear their purpose. And it is a way for us to be able to fund NGOs in 4 categories: veteran, mental health, human trafficking, and animal protection. Wow. And there's nobody doing it. And we're going to be in a video through the Department of Defense. We're super stoked about it. That's all I can say. Look for the video on September 11th this year and join the community, and you'll see what we're doing. So
we're going to have to link everything up in the show description for all that stuff too. You're
going to love it. There's nobody doing this. Cool. We will be the first, and the Department of Defense likes it, and the person who we're actually partnering with is just blown away by what we're trying to do. And so it's a little bit, it's pretty cool. And I'm just really, I'm happy to be part of it. And just, I'm a founder, but there's lots of co-founders that are working with me.
That's awesome. And that's great. You bring the community together. And that's a big part of what, this show's about, and what I'm about as far as community.
I know you are,
and purpose driven, and everything you're doing. That's why we had you on here. You're like I think you're going to become our mascot because you're doing so many things for so many different communities. And it's just blossoming. And with that being said, the question that I love to ask every single person on here before I actually turn it over to you and let you, tell us anything that you haven't said yet, is what will be your ripple effect?
That's a great question. We remember the movie The Butterfly Effect. I'm
Hmm.
glad you bring that up because it does matter. Make that choice. I could go down to my local grocery store
Hmm.
and I could be an ornery old son of a gun and say, I'm not going to wear my mask, kiss my rear end. And I could be mean to everybody I meet. And how do you think that's going to make the world feel, or those people anyways, and the ripple that's going to have? Or I could go down and
Hmm.
follow the rules. Yeah, we know some of this stuff may or may not be the thing that we support or not support, but I could smile and be nice and show some concern and practice a little bit of etiquette, and that would create that effect. So there is a ripple effect. Everything that you do is going to affect not only the people that you're around, but it's going to affect the people that they're around and they're around and da 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 da. If there was a movie out a couple years back where it showed a guy just misses getting on the bus, and it shows what his life is like, that ripple effect of not
Hmm.
making the bus. And then there's another part of the movie, it runs parallel, where he makes the bus and what happens. And when he makes the bus, his life is all sweet,
Hmm.
and cookies. And then, but what it shows you is that single effect of not making the bus. So, what kind of ripple are you going to leave today? Are you going to leave a ripple or make a negative one or a positive one? And I choose to make positive ripples everywhere I go. Doesn't mean I'm not going to make mistakes. It doesn't mean
Hmm.
people may or may not like me. But guess what? I can assure you that anything that we do is going to all come out of core values. Um, and identify your core values. A good Army buddy told me once when I was thinking about running for county commission here in my county. I sat down with a bunch of wealthy landowners and I kind of saw how it really worked. And he's kicking me under the table and he goes, "You're not going to do it, are you?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Write down, if you want to do it, do this, John. Write down your 8 or 9 or 10
Hmm.
or 4 or 3 or 2 or whatever your core values are, and remember them. And if you ever get off a core value, find a way to get back on them."
Hmm.
So I would say to anybody out there listening that wants to have a lot of success in their life, you're not going to do it the way Kirby does it. You're not going to do it the way I do it. But I can tell you, do it your way. Identify with your core values, write them down, remember them, put them on a refrigerator or put them next to the porcelain throne, or put them wherever you want to. But remember your core values and try to stay on target. Adjust fire if you have to, for our military friends that understand that. But understand your core values and understand that those core values will have a ripple effect. And I can assure you, life is so much dreamier to have happy people around you than have negative ones. And John Butcher said in this seminar that my wife and I have been part of, this workshop, if any negativity comes to his AO, he finds a way to DD Mao. He finds a way to not be around negative energy. And you'll know negative energy when you're around somebody. Is that a person that you feel like you've been sucker punched and just knocked the wind out of you?
Yeah.
Or is that a person that elevates you? Kirby, man, let me tell you, brother, I want to be around people that elevate me. I don't want to be around people that are going to sucker punch
Yeah.
me and knock the wind out of me. I want somebody that's fighting for me, because if you're fighting for me, I know that you're somebody that can be trusted, and I'm going to fight for you. And even if you're not fighting for me, I'm still going to fight for you. I'm just
Hmm.
not going to be around you. And there's a difference.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's the truth. So, hey, John, it's been a great conversation. I want to give you one last opportunity to share anything that you want to share that you haven't shared yet. Maybe I haven't asked about it, or maybe we brushed up on it, and you want to add more to it. And then tell us how we can find you and get in contact with you.
Thanks, Kirby. You mentioned something. Get a journal and write in it every day. Write about your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations, what you're going through. And
Hmm.
a journal, I'm glad you mentioned at the beginning, because a journal will help you. I always say, and I like to leave a quote, polarization only works in sunglasses. It doesn't work in sustainable communities. And so find a way to become a clear vision for your community. Find a way to work towards non-polarization. We live in a very polarized society right now. Look for a way to make that come together. if you're interested in Green Zone Hero, some of the things, you can go to greenzonehero.com. It's there. You can also find it on Facebook like everybody else. We have an Instagram page. I'm not as good as I should be with it, but we're out there. You can go to Straight Out Combat Radio on the Heroes Media Group Network. For those of you who know Adam Bird, he does a great job with that platform. And Pete Turner, if you want any shows edited and you're just starting out, Pete Turner with Lions Productions can help you with that. And just, go to greenzonehero.com. You can go to my Facebook page, John Krotek, and just reach out. I'll give you a little bit of a hint here. The company coming is called #Planet. And, wear your purpose, activate yourself, get involved. And if you need help, reach out for it. There's tons of helpers out there. And I can just say I'm blessed to be on your show, Kirby. And you've done a great job. You're such an inspiration to so many people as well. I know you care about the community. And I've had you on my show. If you want to listen to Kirby on my show, it's out there. Just look for Kirby Ingalls on Straight Out Combat Radio. And again, thanks for being here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, John, thank you. And I just want to express that, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you making that phone call years ago and creating this ripple effect, this impact. You're bringing a lot of goodness and kindness and love to the world that I think is sometimes missed because we're so focused on a prize, but not the prize. So, again, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. And don't ever, ever, ever forget, freedom matters. A lot of people pay the high price for us to be able to enjoy these freedoms. And I'm just happy I'm an American. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have fun.
Thank you.